HR Tech, WorkTech, and investment are transforming the future of work. Are you in the know? Welcome to the WorkTech podcast. Join host George LaRocque for expert insights on the trends, M&A activity, and strategies shaping the workplace. Brought to you by oneworktech.com and the Work Defined Podcast Network.
Hey, it's George LaRocque. Welcome back to WorkTech. This is one of my favorite times of the year. It's when we've finished HR Tech and we know who won the PitchFest and we got the vibe in the market and we know where everything's going. And a lot of the conversations, dovetail out of that. Speaking of this conversation today, I'm excited to have Laura Kunz, the Chief Growth Officer and co-founder of Spirence, who was the runner-up at this year's HR Tech PitchFest. And I had the pleasure of working with Laura and all of the contestants prior to the PitchFest. But Laura walked away with that K prize, brought it home to Spirence. And I know along with that prize comes hopefully some momentum. And I know that that the momentum for Spirence here is partly the investors and the analysts and the customers that are at HR Tech, but also due to the problem that Spirence is solving and the way in which Spirence is going about it. It's a real need. So I'm excited to dig in today. And Laura, welcome.
Thanks for having me, George. This is very exciting. It's an honor.
Oh, well, the honor is all mine. So let's start with you and Spirence. Let's start with Spirence. I mentioned that I think you're solving a real problem. And that was generally for everybody who wasn't at HR Tech. Anybody who watched Laura pitch really understood the problem. So why don't you articulate it? What does Spirence do?
Sure. So Spirence is a preventative mental health platform for employers. And we solve for the 75% of today's workforce who are underserved by traditional mental health support. So, we're based in the latest research. Several studies have come out over the last few years. McKinsey, even SHRM just mentioned this in their recent study. But today's workforce, you have 25% of employees who require clinical care. So that's 1/4, right? And then you have an even smaller percentage of the 25 who know they need clinical care or are even willing to get it. So then that narrows it down even further. But really all traditional workplace mental health support and products are built for that 25%. So, we solve and we support that other 75% that post-COVID are really wanting support. In fact, it's one of the top needs reported by employees today. We want mental health support. And then you have the employer saying, well, we're giving it to you. No one's using it. And that's because you have the disconnect. You're actually not giving, the largest percentage of your workforce what they need. You're giving one product for the smallest percentage of your workforce that doesn't really know they need it.
Yeah. So what does that look like? What is that? I love it because it's like the 75%, the majority, it's most of the workforce that needs this. We all need it. So how do you deliver it? How, what is it? How does it materialize within an employer?
Sure. Well, that was, where we've really spent the last 2 years is building the product, revising the product based on the market, but through the lens of being behavioral healthcare providers, which is my background and my co-founder Mike's background. He's a founder of a residential treatment center here in Jupiter, Florida, where I'm based. And, he and his family have owned and operated that for 13 years. I've worked for them for 10 of my 16-year career in behavioral health, hung my hat under their brand and under their mission because they're great people and they do it right. And anyone who's worked for them would say that. And so, we built Spirence through that lens of helping not just that 25%, but the 1% of that 20 who need crisis and clinical care. And so, for years at residential, Mike and I, my co-founder, were working with employers and unions and organizations to help them with that 1% who might need residential treatment at some point. And we saw two things for that. Number one, there's very little market there for a residential treatment center because not a lot of employers are sending people to residential care.
Right.
But then you also see the data. That's because there's not a lot, thankfully, who need it. And then there are not a lot who recognize they need it.
Right.
But what we also saw is the lack of mental health literacy among a workforce and among HR teams and among the people who are setting out to kind of solve this problem for their workforce.
Yep.
So through those conversations is really how Spirence was built. We said, wow, there really is this gap. People really don't understand this. We have a lens helping this 1%, this 25%. And if we can help them, which is, I will tell you, extremely hard to do, sometimes excruciating,
I'm sure.
we can definitely help this 75% not ever get there.
I love that. And so it's such a great backstory. A lot of times in our HR tech space, we have folks who are building a better mousetrap and they've got like one little view to the problem. Recruiting is a great example of that. Like everybody's hired someone, so they think they can do it better, but they really lack the vision or expertise on the whole thing. This is very different. This is the experts understanding the problem and bringing that into HR, which is a vehicle for providing these solutions, whether is it as a benefit or how does it get offered to employees?
Yes, it is. So it is an employee benefit. They'll add it to their wellness program, either in addition to or in place of an EAP. Most are adding in addition to because we're catching that 75%, we're actually driving utilization to EAPs, which I'll be honest, we didn't predict how well it would do that. We thought it was a possibility and of course hoped, but it's been a seamless flow from our platform to these higher levels of care, which of course makes us very happy in terms of our mission, but it makes our customers very happy because it's a problem that they've historically had. No one uses our EAP. Well, they don't trust you, employer, to give that, when it's through their employer, it's different. When it's through a third party, a trusted expert, a trusted platform, it's very different.
Yeah. EAPs have become really broad too. Like the EAP, you can go get help buying a car at an EAP, as well as the kind of, mental wellness, mental health benefit that you're talking about. So it's sort of like the entry point to what's happened. They've tried to pack value into the EAP under the term assistance in order to get more utilization. And I've seen, a couple of experiences now where it's part trust and part awareness. Like when you're onboarding, it's like, oh, and we have an EAP, and it's like, great. Yeah, we have an EAP, whatever that is. That's sort of like, you move on and you never think that you have a discrete resource to get, input, to get help. So I've seen in a couple of ways different tools that have increased utilization, but I like that you're focused on wellness and mental wellness, and that's really where the EAP should be having its impact. So it's an elective benefit, right? It's something that you're either using or you're not using, but it's accessible to all employees. Or where does it sit in that menu?
It is, yes. So it's a benefit for all employees and their loved ones, actually.
Oh,
So
okay.
if an employer subscribes, they pay that one subscription, and then it's accessible to anyone in that person's circle, we call it, because through our lens, the behavioral healthcare lens, it's extremely important for that employee to have healthy people around them.
Yeah.
So we've had members that have told us, I've passed this link on to my daughter. Some content came through that was relevant to my daughter, and thank you so much. It really helped her. She's willing to see a therapist. Do you have what you recommend? So, it's story after story of the way people are using it. Really what we set out to do was that initial engagement And how do you connect with that user? And just after years in behavioral health, helping families, personally, I've helped thousands of families. I was on we call it the front lines in behavioral health, where I'd be the first phone call for a professional who had maybe a client who needed residential care, a family in crisis, and that family didn't know who to call, what to do. So they would say, call Laura or someone on my team. So after years of just understanding that you need to meet people where they are. Not everybody is in crisis. Some people are having a difficult day. Some people are thriving. And Spirence is a digital platform. So we built it with the everyday user in mind, not someone who just would need this on occasion or for a crisis. So how does a person weave mental wellness throughout each day? These are busy professionals, right? Like, how many of us have an hour to invest in an educational seminar? It's all these traditional, antiquated models that aren't factoring in how we use things today and how we learn. So it's a digital platform. It's actually not an app, because 80% of our users use it on their laptop or on their desktop, which is what we wanted. That's how we built the product. We do want you to take 5 minutes out of your day, 10 minutes out of your day. So we do a game changer for us in terms of engagement was when we started an auto enroll. And so each of our customers gives us names and email addresses of their members. We do one bulk auto enroll, and that starts to push information out via text message. And now we also have notifications that come through just like an app would. And it's a one-click access to that education. It can be a 3-minute video with a licensed therapist teaching you how to do a bee breath, which who knew, but a bee breath can regulate your nervous system in 5 breaths.
Wow.
And, these are just game-changing tools that our content contributors who've been in the field for decades tell us, these are the things we don't have a chance to teach people in therapy when they're sitting in our office. We're doing the talk therapy and we have a short amount of time, but these are the tools and the skills that can really shift a day for someone
Yeah.
who might be struggling.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a great example. I know breathing, breath is very powerful, and, we use it in our family all the time for different situations.
Well, yeah, and you need reminders. I mean, we're all
Yeah.
going so fast. The train today moves faster than it ever has.
Yeah.
And so our goal is to teach people to tolerate that pace, to better tolerate that pace, build resilience, have those tools in your toolbox that don't take a lot of time
Yeah.
throughout the day. And it's, I really, really respect products like Headspace. There are other products that have come into this market and done a great job, but you also have to factor in how different people are. You have 5 generations in the workforce. You have all sorts of subpopulations, and that's also why we're evidence-based and we do a lot of research behind what we put in to the platform.
Yep. Yep. Well, thank you for all of that. I think it's, as I said at the top, you're solving a real problem. There's a real void in the market. I got a lot of that feedback on site at the show, at the PitchFest. And that's kind of where I'd like to shift gears to, is some of the business aspect, or, starting with the PitchFest. I know it's early days for Spirence, but, being the runner up, what was the whole experience like? The whole PitchFest experience for you coming into it? Any feedback or learnings you got from the judges, the audience, other founders along the way? What was it all like for you?
It was an experience I will never forget. My colleague who was there with me as well, he's our vice president of product and operations, and we just had an unbelievable experience. We did not know what to expect coming in. That time last year, I'd walked into the conference hall at HR Tech, and it was our very first conference in the industry. So we were there just kind of, wow, looking at all the giant booths. Behavioral health, you'll get some nice booths, but nothing like that. And so we were just so new. And, my colleague, Chris, our VP, had watched PitchFest the previous year. and he said, this is really something that we should do. And so we were like, let's go for it. Now, I was very surprised when we were chosen to pitch. So
Okay.
it was the first. I knew we would be different. I always do my research, and I'd looked into who had been a part of it in the past, who had won. And I was shocked when we got into the finals.
I could see that. I could see. Yeah.
But I was so grateful because I'll tell you, I went into it and my mantra was just positively impact one person watching the pitch.
Okay.
Just go in. And I kept also saying, you don't have to deliver it perfectly. You just need to connect with the audience and the judges, because that's what Spirence does. We connect with people.
Okay.
So if you can portray that, that's who you are. And so that's what needs to be portrayed. That's the product. That's the brand. And so that really made the whole thing less intimidating. I just kept saying, go in there, scan the audience, connect with somebody, anybody. And it just so happened that there were quite a few people in the audience that I could tell really were understanding the message. And a few of the judges, especially that first round, I could tell really understood who we were and what we were doing. And then I do have to say, one thing I learned from the judges, one thing I learned from the other competitors, I loved how the judges kept emphasizing, don't say that you don't have competition.
Right. Right.
It's that because the one said, if you don't have competition, you don't have a market.
That's right. That was Gene Akil who said that. Yeah. Yeah.
So much respect for that. I hope we all learned from that, because it's true. And I will tell you, that's one of the things that has almost stopped me in my tracks a couple times building Spirence is the competition. Because we can be locked in with those EAPs, and there are several valued at billions.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it really stops somebody in their tracks. But then the other thing that I had sort of an aha moment backstage before the final presentation, and one of the other contestants looked at me and they said, it's just a game. Go out there and play it. And I thought, number one, it helped kind of ease me.
I love that.
Yeah. I was like, okay, that's maybe how it's seen. But then in my heart, I said, but it's not a game to us. And that's why we're doing what we're doing, because we have seen the other side. We have seen, and the workplace has such a unique opportunity to help that 75%. They have a captive audience there. So I went on stage with that and I was like, just connect, be passionate, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, it worked out. And I think you had the right mindset. I think it's great to hear that the interaction with the judges and the whole thing, gave you something, as it wasn't just you, delivering your pitch and, waiting for a score, but that you found that helpful. And I think that's what makes that PitchFest unique, is because it's folks from the industry. They're not, I don't want to say just VCs, they serve a real purpose, but in the market, but they do get the problem, and they have seen a lot of different approaches toward this problem. So that's great. Now, you got some momentum coming out of the PitchFest. Before we started recording here, you're saying that has gone really well. What kind of momentum did you get, and how do you plan on keeping that rolling?
Yeah, well, I'll say two things on that. One's a little less tangible, and this is also something that we walked away from as a company. PitchFest really forces you to refine that pitch. I mean, that's what it is. Yeah. That's what it is. And so we walked away with so many more of our partners, who are already our partners, even understanding us better, because it really forces you to articulate who you are and what you do in a very short period of time. And it's something I wish every startup could go through, is PitchFest. And if any are listening, considering applying next year, apply, because it just was a great, great process to refine your messaging. And then with that has come potential opportunities. We're already talking with a PEO about a potential partnership.
Great.
It's been on our wish list since we founded Spirence, was to have a PEO partnership. And of course, there are many conversations that have happened, but it just comes down to priorities for people. It just was it was like an accelerator for relationships.
Good. Good. I think that's a big part of the intent of the show, and we've built this investor experience, which is it's a catchy phrase, but it's everything around sort of the startup ecosystem, and that's music to my ears. That you had a good experience, and that I like that accelerant. That's excellent. So how do you keep it going now? How do you keep that going, or what are your thoughts about keeping it?
Well, I did take the win, being one of the winners, to a lot of current partners and
Yep.
potential partners. It's something that one of our big partners is Aon, and we finalized that partnership in May, and a big press release around that. And that was
Yep.
really our big kind of rollout to the industry. And we've been working on it for about a year and a half, and we're primed for hopefully a great sales season with them in the jumbo market, And so I forget, I just lost my train of thought with that, George. We're gonna have to cut this out. What was I saying?
Momentum, Aon, taking it to the partners.
Yes, yes, yes. So Aon was a great example. They were all at HR Tech or a lot of the team that we work with, and they were thrilled because it helps them on the sales side, to say that this partner
Yep.
they have was, they believe in us, and clearly many others believe in the mission and the product. And so it has also sparked additional conversation with prospects who were maybe concerned about the nascency of Spirence. We were getting that a lot, George. It's very hard to establish credibility as
Yep.
a startup, especially when you can be compared to the mental health companies in this space valued at billions of dollars.
Right.
We're just
Right.
we're just not there yet. We're one brick at a time. So this was a great thing for credibility. And then, a lot of our, like I said, active referral partners took that for credibility of us as well.
Yep. Yep. Those are great answers. I think, you've got a product that while it stands alone and you can sell it, directly or provide it directly, it's built for distribution through these partners. And that is the most efficient way to get to market right now. There are a lot of players given, there's so many while it's an exciting time, given all the tech, innovation that's happening, there are a lot of headwinds in the market from a economic perspective. It's not the same for every category. There are a lot of folks looking for ways to capitalize on a channel. So I think by taking this momentum and validation to the channel as well as to the direct, really smart. And I think and Aon's such a great partner to have in that regard. I think any momentum you get with them will probably bring some others as well, accelerate their interest as well. That's how it tends to work. So what about your, when you look ahead, not about the momentum, but your product and, your roadmap, is this next year, 2026, really about growth, or is there some direction with the product that you're excited to take this year?
Sure. Yeah. So 2025 was our year of product development. In 2024, we had 6 early adopters that
Okay.
were amazing, and they really helped us refine the product. We're very grateful to have renewed our contracts with all
Yeah.
6 who were very happy, and renewed for 2 to 3 years. And that's not because they like us. That's because we did drive utilization well beyond their traditional models. And we were also grateful and relieved to see the platform doing that because
Yeah.
you build it with that intent. But, so 2025 was really about the evolution of the product. We just launched V3 of the platform, actually right before HR Tech. So, working through any bugs there, but we wanted to position ourselves in 2026 to just foot on the gas. We have about 550,000 lives in our pipeline currently. That's not the pipe dream pipeline because I'm very conservative. Just my background is in business development and sales and marketing. I'm
Yep.
very conservative with that pipeline, but we have about 550,000 lives through unions and through resellers that are looking very promising. So yes, 2026 will be about growth. Our model really hits its sweet spot at about 1 million lives.
Okay.
So we're hoping to get there. That's when we start to drive that 86 to 89% margin. That looks really good. And so we're driving to get there. And we have no reason to believe that we won't get there in 2026. We're backed by a very well capitalized family office. We have funding secured through the end of 2026, 2027. We will probably look at a Series A.
Okay.
And look to raise probably two to 3 million, and kind of start having those conversations next year.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
that sounds amazing. I think your part of the momentum, it's not all about like next quarter, coming out of the pitch fest for you, but that investor experience is a lot of investors saw you, and you're on their radar now, and folks that are focused on this space at all. We had over 220 investors that registered for HR Tech, and that was probably across 200 individual firms, everything from, early stage to investment bankers, everything in between, private equity, VC, different stages there. So the fact that you're on the radar and then, delivering, go get those 550,000 lives, because, that's, then you're bringing the momentum, to them, check-in points, so that's good stuff. One thing that I forgot to ask before we wrap up was the name. Where did the name come from? Tell us what is Spirence?
Oh gosh, I know everybody hopes for this really inspiring story there. And of course that there was inspiration behind the final name. But my co-founder and my boss of 10 years, who I absolutely adore, he runs multiple other companies. It's his family office. And he said, you know what, Laura, I do not like to name companies. It's just one of my least favorite things to do.
Mm-hmm.
You go ahead, you name it. But we wanted to get the name trademarked. So when I looked into naming a wellness company, oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Oh my
can
God,
imagine.
because Mary down the street has founded a wellness company.
Right.
And, there are so many. And so finally, our trademark attorney was like, just choose a word that doesn't exist. And, we come from behavioral health, and it's also just who I am, a little bit nerdy about this, but it needed to have meaning. It needed to have meaning. And so I just was thinking of really who we are, what we do, why we're unique. We have spirit and we have experience, and that came Spirence. So we got that passed through the trademark attorneys. Then we went through the whole period of time where you're new in the space and nobody can freaking pronounce your name. And I'm like, we didn't do okay, we needed to do one thing right out of the gate. They're like,
I'm surprised that I never had an issue with it. I'm surprised you had an issue with that.
You got it right the first time. Well, our first tagline was, it's not just a benefit, it's an experience. And so we think that was hurting us because people were, Spirence, experience. But now we like that we're different. And, we like that people ask, what's with the name?
Yeah, that is a good story. That he said it wasn't going to be it's a good story. It's especially good because, like coming from, strategy, go to market, the whole naming thing, you want a name that does have some kind of relevance, but it doesn't pigeonhole you as well. A lot of folks are, they're, because the way you come to market, things will change about the platform, about who you serve, about, who adopts, and that may or may not be relevant for Spirence, but so much tech, you don't want to get pigeonholed by your name. You don't want to, if you can avoid a rebrand, that's a good thing, at least a name change. So I think good on you picking something that has meaning, but you can adapt as the company adapts and as the product grows. So that's good. Good stuff. All right. So how can people learn more? Where do they find Spirence?
Our website's very comprehensive, www.spirencewellness.com. It will even have some of the research on there behind, where we fit in the market. And also, people really like on our website, we have a savings calculator, not this basic. It's actually a proprietary formula for employers or organizations to see the percentage and the dollar amount behind that underserved and just how much prevention can impact. I mean, we were out at PitchFest and it was us and a bunch of TAs, talent acquisition platform. And my colleague and I kept joking. We're like, well, we actually help solve their problem too, because once you work so hard to onboard people, you have to retain them.
Right.
So it's good for employers to really see how many people, want to be supported on the daily, not just when a crisis or a, painful experience hits.
Yeah. Well, Laura, this was great. Thank you so much for being here and telling the story. Congratulations again on PitchFest. I enjoyed your pitch and good luck this year. I'd love to circle back at some point and see how it's going in a few months and maybe, get an update for everyone.
Yeah. You're definitely someone I would love to have in my corner, George. I've really appreciated our interactions and, just hearing from people at PitchFest. I know you have a great track record in the industry as well and have a lot of really good insight. So I will not turn you down on a future conversation.
Okay. All right.
I'll take whatever you're willing to give me, George.
Thanks for all that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, and thanks everybody, wherever you're watching or listening. And thanks again to Laura and Spirence. And until next time.
Thank you guys so much for your support.